For those of you that drove to our church today, I know when you were driving in, you were thinking, oh, this is so exciting. This weekend is so exciting. And you were just enthralled. You're thinking how exciting it's going to be when you saw those orange barrels on the media, right? And that's what you're thinking. I know that's what you're thinking this is going to be an exciting time coming up with all these orange barrels right where we pull in to come to church. I know that's what you were thinking. Had nothing to do with football season. Had nothing to do with all those orange barrels. You know, I thought nothing worse could happen except this. All these orange barrels we had to deal with, you know, for a while on 84 as we're going back toward the circle from this campus and headed to the most popular place, Krispy Kreme. As we're heading down there, I had to deal with all those orange cones. I would think there can't be anything worse, right, than having to wait 15 minutes to go, you know, 1 mile, whatever, to get to Krispy Kreme. But there is something worse. Do you know what that is? In the midst of those orange barrels, in the midst of waiting in line to get through all the construction stuff that we're going to have to deal with, is if you get stuck behind a garbage truck, that could be worse, right? After they get a full load, and you're stuck behind them, and you can't go anywhere. You can't go left and right because there's orange barrels to the left, orange barrels to the right, orange barrels in front of you. There's orange barrels everywhere. We can't go anywhere. We're stuck behind the garbage truck. You ever been there before? You ever been stuck behind a garbage truck? And it doesn't matter if you turn the recycle on, you still smell it, right? You still smell it. It doesn't matter. Same thing goes for landfills. Yeah, if you live near one, you're sort of stuck, aren't you? You got no choice. You're going to have those smells. There's a community in Ohio, Hubbard, Ohio, that is actually, they're protesting because they want to expand their landfill and put more stuff in there. And they're protesting it because they're saying, hey, this is called health concerns that we have, obviously the water and all that stuff, plus the property values go down. And yes, that will happen. I'm sorry, that will happen. But landfills are just sort of what we have to live with. We just don't want to live near them. We love them as long as somebody else has the problem. We don't want them near us. We've had landfills forever. They've been around forever. Unfortunately, because of how we're multiplying in our society, in our communities, as we're getting more and more people, and as we're getting more and more less likely to recycle, because we're a throwaway society, it becomes more and more of an issue. There's more and more junk there. There's more and more stuff there. And unless you work for a company that has to do that, most of us don't think a thing about it. Most of us don't want to think about it. Most of us don't want to live near it. We want it out of sight, out of mind. But can anything good come out of a landfill? Seriously. Can anything good come out of it? Can anything good come of it? Well, in a place called Asunción, Paraguay, there is something good. They are turning wash drums into kettle drums. They're turning drain pipes into trumpets. Don't believe me? This is from NPR, so you know it's got to be true. Watch.
Ahí va. 3.
Trash gets a mulligan. You know, stuff that people throw away, paired with some skilled hands, become these wonderful instruments. This trash gets a second chance, but not just the trash. You see, the players in this recycled orchestra of Keturah live around this dump. Live around, and sometimes families are trying to eke out a living around this huge trash pile. So why do I talk about trash today? Well, because it's actually in our text. Listen to this. 2 other men, both criminals, were also led out with him to be executed. When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him there, along with the criminals, one on his right and the other on his left. And of course, we're talking about the crucifixion of Jesus. And when Luke tells us he was crucified at a place called the Skull, or Golgotha, is what Matthew tells us and other Gospels tell us, this place that he was executed was a trash pile. It was filled with garbage. That's what it was. And why? Why did they have the executions in the middle of a trash pile, in the middle of the dump? Well, it goes back to the Old Testament. It literally goes back to the Old Testament. And so I'm going to play a game with you. And I'm going to give you some scriptures from the Old Testament, and there's going to be a blank. And the answer for the blank is going to be the same for every one of these. Listen to this. But burn the bull's flesh and its hide and its intestines, and the phrase that you put in there, outside the camp. It is a sin offering. Outside the camp is a sin offering. On the altar, he burned the fat and the kidneys and the long lobe of the liver from the sin offering, as the Lord commanded Moses. In the flesh and the hide he burned up where? Outside the camp. Okay? I think we got one more. Okay? The bull and the goat for the sin offerings, whose blood was brought to the most holy place to make atonement, must be taken outside the camp. Their hides and flesh and intestines are to be burned up. Okay, so the Old Testament is giving us this idea. We got to go outside the camp to burn the leftovers, if you will, from the sacrifices. What's going on? In case you don't remember, in case you've never heard the story before, God has demanded from the very beginning that to have right worship with Him, blood must be spilt so that we will receive forgiveness from our sins. Okay? I try to explain this to our 6th graders at one point. Every year I have this. I talk about the sacrifice. And sometimes you look on their faces, you go like, really, what? This is the way it is. Okay? I didn't write the manual. Okay? God didn't ask my opinion. He just did this. This is the way He laid out from the very beginning, that a sacrifice of blood of an animal would be a way to say, I want to be right with you, God. I want to be able to worship you. I want to be in a right relationship with you. And God said, here's the way you do this. Acknowledge the sin in your life by spilling blood. And then when you acknowledge that, with this symbol of blood being spilled, then I will see you sin-free. That's sort of the essence of the sacrifice. And by the way, this is not just, this blood sacrifice stuff is not confined to Christianity or Judaic traditions, right? There's a number of religions and other cultures do this, okay? God, it's not like God made this up, okay? This has sort of been what has been part of human history for many, many centuries. But our history, when we go back to Genesis, if you remember, the first family, the 2 sons brought gifts to God. One was a vegetarian. He brought fruits and vegetables, and God said, that's nice, but I like meat. I'm going to Longhorns, you know. That's where I'm going. And the brother that brought the animal to him to sacrifice, God said, that's what I want. And of course, the vegetarian didn't like that very much. And He let him know it. But it goes all the way back there, where the blood being spilled was what God was expecting and what God desired for His people. Okay? So the blood and stuff was sacrificed, but the rest of the stuff had to be outside the camp. They had to get the rest of it, the remains of this, outside the camp. So this was outside the city. We're talking about Jerusalem here, or outside the camp of the early Israelites wandering around. And the camp was wherever they wandered around for 40 years, remember? They were on tents, and they had a huge place where they laid down and spent the night or whatever. But if any sacrifice was made during there, they had to go take it away from the people and dispose of it outside the camp, which meant they had to get rid of that rotting stuff they didn't use. Whatever was burned on the altar, whatever was spilled on the altar, that stayed there. But the rest of it, they didn't need the hide, the intestines, bones, all that stuff. They had to get rid of it. Now think about this. Would you want rotting, decaying animals laying around your city, on your city block? What's the homeowner association at Grove Park say about this? Would they allow that? Probably not, right? Homeowner association, no, don't leave your rotting animal at the, no, we don't do that. Why? It's a health hazard. It really is. And for the early Israelites and stuff, that's sort of what God had planned. He said, yes, you don't want to have rotting flesh, anything laying around where people live, because it's a health hazard, so you need to get rid of it. That just makes common sense. Get rid of it. So you're going to take it outside where you live, and we're going to burn it. We're going to burn it on the trash pile. We're going to burn it away from the city where no one lives. And second of all, because of the Jewish traditions and the laws there, if you touch something dead and rotting, you were considered unclean. So you wouldn't want that around either. So it was sort of a double whammy of why they wanted to do this, to get this stuff outside the city and throw it outside and let it burn somewhere else. Okay? And if you think about it, the idea of being clean and unclean, if you've done any history research at all about lepers, there's leper colonies, and we get a hints of this, and even in the New Testament, Jesus dealt with 10 lepers. That the idea was the lepers were unclean, so they made them all stay together. They had to go outside the city, outside the camp, to where they would live because they were considered unclean. So this is all sort of goes together. And the writer of Hebrews knows this. The writer of Hebrews knows this backstory of being outside the camp, of these sacrifices being made, and the sacrifice being made, but the remains are burned outside the camp. Because here's what the writer of Hebrews says. The high priest carries the blood of animals into the most holy place as a sin offering. This will go back to what we can see in Exodus and Leviticus and Deuteronomy. The high priest carries the blood outside the camp. The bodies are burned outside the camp. Let us, as Jesus also suffered outside the city gate. So here the writer of Hebrews is making reference to where Jesus was crucified. Jesus also suffered outside the city gate to make the people holy through his own blood. So you catch this. The animals were sacrificed at the altar in the most holy place. But then the remains were outside the gate, whereas Jesus, the entire sacrifice was outside the gate, outside the city for the whole. Let us then go to him, go to Jesus, outside the camp, bearing the disgrace he bore. For here we do not have an enduring city, but we are looking for the city that is to come. So he makes a reference to the city of Jerusalem being the holy place. We got to get the desecrated, rotten stuff outside the camp. He's saying, we don't have that. We have something better because Jesus went outside the camp for all of us. He went on this trash pile for all of us. And so that's why we look back now to the skull. We look back to Golgotha. On this trash pile, what do we have going on? We have the crucifixion. We have Jesus and two dudes are being crucified outside the camp. We started out in Luke, but we're going to jump to Matthew here because Matthew records something that we need to pay attention to that I think is crucial to the story. Two rebels were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are Son of God." In the same way, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders mocked him. He saved others, they said, but he can't save himself. He's the king of Israel? That's probably more of a question. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him. For he said, "I am the Son of God." And then this verse is what we miss many times. In the same way, the rebels who were crucified with him also heaped insults on him. Notice plural. The rebels, both of them, were hurling insults at Jesus. Now, I can't comprehend truthfully what was going on with these dudes and their minds, and I can't comprehend it. But in my mind, there's a timing thing going on here. You know, when we read the story of Jesus, we sort of put Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We all come together and we come up with these 7 last words from the cross, and we sort of try to put them in some kind of chronological order. But in my mind, I'm not so sure what that order is, because here's what I think is going on. This is just my opinion. So these dudes are up there, these thieves on the cross, crucified just like Jesus. They're hanging there. Nobody's paying attention to them, right? Everybody's hurling insults at the guy on the middle cross. And they're hearing this. They're taking this all in. And they're looking down the crowd saying, wait a second, 99% of this crowd is anti-Jesus. Nobody cares about us, but they are really throwing their insults at Jesus. We got a few people at the foot of Jesus not saying anything. They're crying. Looks like his mom. And another dude. And a couple other ladies. But everybody else is just throwing these insults, and it feels like to me a crowd mentality. And you've been a part of those before, where you just go along with the crowd. You have no choice but to go along. Sometimes you just sort of get caught up in it. Sometimes you get the juices flowing and you start doing stuff that you normally wouldn't do, but because you're with 50, 100, 200 people, you start going as well. And I think that's what these guys got caught up in. Because they heard these folks yelling these insults at Jesus, and maybe some twisted way they were thinking, hey, if we start doing the same thing that they are doing, maybe they'll look differently at us. Maybe they'll even help us transition from life to death where it won't be as painful. Maybe they'll give us something to drink. Maybe they'll give us something to dull the pain. I don't know what they're thinking. This is just my mind, the way I'm thinking about it. Why else would they start hurling insults at Jesus like everybody else? Because they're sitting there dying. And they're having the energy to heap on Jesus. But something happened in the midst of all this, in the midst of the insults, in the midst of the mocking. These two guys have nothing else to do but pay attention to what's going on around them. They have nothing to do but pay attention to their environment, and have nothing to do but pay attention to the guy to their left or right, the guy in the middle. And the guy in the middle starts saying some things that you would not expect him to say. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. They divide up his clothes by casting lots. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there, the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to her, "Woman, here is your son," and to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, this disciple took her into his home. So after they had joined the crowd in taunting Jesus, they heard something unexpected. They heard Jesus forgiving those who were insulting him, forgiving those who were taunting him, forgiving those who nailed his hands and feet to a wooden cross. And they heard Jesus, in the midst of pain, in the midst of knowing he was going to die, have compassion and concern for his mother. And then this happens. One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults. "Aren't you the Messiah? save yourself and us. One of them, after hearing this come from Jesus, after watching Jesus, said, hey, aren't you the Messiah? These folks have been calling you the Messiah. I've heard about you a little bit. If you're really who you say you are, you need to save us. It's sort of a selfish request, I know, but wouldn't you do the same thing? You're stuck there. You know you're going to die. And based on what you've heard about this dude in the middle, based on what these people are saying about this dude in the middle, he possibly has the power to pull all three of us off this hill, off this trash pile, off these crosses. He could save us from a physical death. See, that dude knew he was going to die a painful death. It was coming up shortly. It wasn't very far away. And like the rest of us, I think he tried to find a way out. And he thought his way out might have been the guy in the middle. But the other guy acted differently. The other criminal rebuked him. Don't you fear God, since you're under the same sentence? We are punished justly, for we're getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong. Then he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus answered him, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. Paradise. In the middle of a burning, stinking dump. Paradise. And just think, just a little bit before this criminal was hurling insults at him, was mocking him. He wasn't even thinking about the bad choices he made. He had sort of put those off and was focusing in on Jesus. But he comes face to face with Jesus. And unbelievably, the same mouth that cursed Christ now defends him. Unbelievable. What happened? But what has gone on in just a short time on the cross? He sees Jesus face to face. He's confronted with Jesus. He saw how he acted. He saw how he loved. He saw how he forgave. And something, I think, must have clicked in his mind. As he's sitting there, as he himself knows he's dying, I think he figured out, hey, there's something more to this life than living and dying. There's something in the next life. There's something possibly more wonderful in the life to come. And my suffering in these next few hours pales into the importance of what happens next in my life. See, there's something about that guy in the middle of the both of them, that guy in the middle cross, that causes that one dude to say, remember me when you come into your kingdom. See, something happens to all of us when we stand in the presence of God. When we are face to face with the living God, the creator of the universe, something happens to us. Something happened to that thief. We were punished justly, getting what we deserve, but this man has done nothing wrong. And there you got the gospel in one sentence. The essence of eternity comes out in the mouth of a crook. I am wrong, Jesus is right. I have failed, Jesus is not. I deserve death, Jesus deserves life. See, that thief knew precious little about Jesus, but what he did know was very precious. He knew that an innocent man was dying. And not just dying, but dying an unjust death. And he didn't complain a lick. And if Jesus can do that, he might just be who he says he is. When you think of someone far far away from God, man, that thief on the cross is about as far away as you can get. He's the poster child for being far away from God. He literally was just a couple hours from reaping the fruits of his bad choices. So how far is too far? We don't know a lot about that guy. We know he repented. We know he recognized Jesus, but we know he made bad mistakes. We know he made poor choices. He made poor moral choices. He made poor friend choices and people he hung around. But was his life a waste? Is he spending eternity now reaping the rewards for all he'd done wrong? Nope. He's actually reaping the rewards for the one thing he did right, for the one choice he did make that was a good one, the one solitary choice he made that redeemed all of his bad ones. He had not gone too far. Now he had come up to about as close to the edge as you could get before falling off. But he had not gone too far. Moments before he died, he made the right choice. Jesus allowed him to make that choice. And he allows you and me the same opportunity. There was another guy on the cross. Cross is right. Another guy on that trash heap. The other guy, he was face to face with the same Jesus. And you would have thought at some point during that afternoon when the skies were darkened and after Jesus had told the one dude, hey, you're going to be with me in paradise, you'd think the other guy would have said, Jesus, I'm thinking about it. I'm a ditto head, so what he said for me too, right? You'd think he would have said that. He could say, Jesus, this, hey man, I've been up here so long, the pain from the nails, the dehydration, has me all crazy thinking. So what he said goes for me too. All right, we good? We good? Well, he couldn't do that. But anyway, no, that didn't happen. He had a choice. Both men, truthfully. Two men, two choices. Two different men, two different choices. Same situation, two different choices. Sometimes we actually complain about a lack of choice, right? We say something that's not fair. It's not fair that I was born into poverty. It was not fair that I was born a Miami Hurricane fan. It was not fair that I was born too slow or I was born where I didn't have a great singing voice. We complain about that, but get this. We all get the freedom to choose where we spend eternity. There's a lot of things we don't get to choose. We don't get to choose our family. We don't get to choose our gender. We don't get to choose our place of birth or our race. But would you like the opposite, though? Think about that. Would you like the opposite? Would you like to choose everything in this life and let God choose the next? Okay? It'd be like we have a menu. Okay, I'm going to choose a high IQ. I will choose good health. Low cholesterol. I'm going to choose high metabolism so I can eat whatever I want, right? But we don't get to make that choice. When it comes to life after death, we do get that choice. We have it. I like the trade-off. Okay, God, so you're telling me that the temporarily, just for a handful of years, a speck in the midst of time, that I'm going to have to endure some hardships, I'm going to endure some tough times, I'm going to have to reap the fruits of some poor choices, but I get to choose to spend eternity with you. I'm going to take that every time. Two men, two choices. Both had the opportunity in the middle of a freaking garbage dump, had the opportunity to make a great choice. Only one of them did. The garbage dump. The last place that anybody would think that you would be given hope, the last place that you would think that anybody would be given a second chance, in the middle of the garbage dump, and that's what we have. That trash and those kids in Paraguay found hope and found second chances. There were 3 crosses there. You know, the dump, the place where they executed and crucified people, they could have done a number of people that day, right? They weren't limited. It wasn't like they had a code to live by. It could have been just one person. It could have been Jesus by himself. It could have been 4 or 5 other people. There were plenty of criminals to go around. But why 3? Why 3 that day? Could it be that this picture for us is a reminder that we do have a choice? It is a reminder that there is a certain point where we have gone too far. But the guy that chose to look at Jesus, chose to look him in the face and say, remember me when you come into your kingdom, nobody would have given that guy a prayer. But in the end, that's all he had. And in the end, that's all it took. So right now, there's an ex-con walking the streets of heaven with the biggest grin on his face because he knows more about grace than 1,000 preachers. So I want you to remember this. Jesus' love does not depend on what we do for him. Dude that said, remember me, what did that guy do for Jesus? Just a few moments before Jesus said, today you'll be with me in paradise, he didn't do nothing because he was insulting him. So Jesus' love doesn't depend on what we do for him. Doesn't matter how much we go to church. Doesn't matter how much mission trips we go on. No. We have value simply because we exist. Jesus values you because you are. Because you exist. Not because of giving thousands of dollars to a church. Not because you've done your best to be the best person you can be. No. You have value in Jesus' eyes and God's eyes because you exist. And you have the freedom to choose. And that freedom was given to you and me on a pile of trash. And freedom never smelled so good. God, that we ask that your Spirit would continue to work in our lives to remind us of who we are in your eyes, to remind us that we have value, that you love us, and God, you're willing to pull us literally out of the trash heap, remanufacture us for your good, and to make beautiful music out of our lives. And God, I ask that you would remind us to make a choice every day to choose you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Never too far. We continue this series next week. Dr. McKay will be with us and sharing us another example. I believe we'll be looking at the life of Joseph in Genesis next week. So I encourage you to come back and or tune in. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great week. Have a safe travel day tomorrow if you're traveling.